Bad right now.
Yeah, but then that's.
It's okay.
Yeah, it is.
Last night, I was sneezing and sneezing and good stuff. I was down above, I'm like, I wonder if I have a. No, it was allergy.
Probably. He's in Georgia.
Yeah.
Okay. That he can afford. What time do you have?
Yeah, it's 6:59.
It's 6:09. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Nice to see some new faces here tonight. I'm Gail Witzel-Steiner. I'm president of Central Sierra Audubon, and we are pleased that you are here. We're pleased to welcome Rob, and Paula will introduce him in just a minute. I want to remind our members, I'll speak up. We have our annual meeting May 30th, and Paulo and Janet are going to host us at their home for a potluck dinner for our annual meeting where we will elect our new officers. We're going to publish the newsletter, the Squawker, a week early because Bruce generally puts it out on the 1st, but we're going to put it out a week early so that you have all the information about the annual meeting, and we encourage you to join us. We need to elect the new officers and the old officers to run again. So we hope that you'll join us. It is a potluck. So anything else? Well, we have a couple of field trips coming up. June 4th, I believe, Kit is coming back from Bend, and she is going to lead a field trip to Fahey Meadows. And then Bruce, where are you, Bruce? Go back here, is going to do one for us in Big Trees on July 1st. So we'd love to have you join us for that as well. And there will be information about those two trips in the newsletter. So,
okay, wait, it's me. This is a reminder, I'm not sure if it's in the Squawker or not, Squawker from that early. On July 11th, we're going to meet at Barrows or Photos. We don't 8 o'clock, and we're going to go to the State Flyway Decoy Association. There's a big art fair. And there are other decoys there besides ducks. They carve, they're all carved. They carve songbirds, they carve raptors, they carve herpes. I mean, it's amazing. It's a 2-hour and 10-minute trip to Sacramento for that, and we'll be back before it's done. So there we go.
Okay, follow.
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, the meeting at the end of the month at our house, there's a nice swimming pool. Anyone who wants to come, bring the same shirt there.
and the shower.
And the shower.
And the
Towel.
Oh, the towel, yeah. And there was a little bit of an issue because a friend of ours gave us this beautifully carved birdhouse. So beautiful. And he unfortunately since deceased. But I hung it more as decoration. And darn it, if it didn't become occupied, house rents, which in Spanish are chichin. And that's what it sounds like, chichin. But this morning, as we were leaving the house, no, actually, there's not really, there's feathers on the ground. I suspect that one of the little ones may have come out and I don't know what happened. So they'll probably be hatched. We won't have to worry about them because otherwise they'd be right on top of one of the tables. Okay, and then afterwards bring your binoculars because after we have our meeting, you might want to go back down to the pool, and there are birds. And a couple of days ago, I did see a male and a female.
We're not getting audio, but we're not.
Bullets.
Yeah.
So no guarantees there, of course. So anyway, Robb Hirsch, whose name, by the way,
14 online.
because Hirsch
Pretty
is
good.
an elk, European elk, a stag. So the other day with Ralph, Dr. Ralph Rutherford, of course, who has a long standing with this organization, and we were in Yosemite. And of course, you don't see that much in the way of wildlife in Yosemite. We saw a couple of birds, but not much. So it'll be very interesting to see what we don't see, right? Because we make too much noise. And so that's exactly what Rob does. And after his studies, he worked for the California State Parks, a field biologist, a U.S. Geological Survey, and other private firms. And so what I'm looking forward to see is what we don't see, right? Which are the real wildlife of Yosemite National Park. But not that that's the only thing he does, he's a biologist all over the place, but this will be largely about Yosemite. So the floor is yours, Rob.
Thank you. Thank you. Excuse me. First, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Love talking in front of our local groups, especially those interested in the natural world as I am. It's a great audience, and it's always rewarding to have conversations about this stuff. And I'm not going to go too far into my background, but just like was mentioned, I was a biologist for 15, 20 years, working in a lot of different places and different species before transitioning into photography. And really my primary goal with photography, and I'll talk about some of the other aspects of it during the slideshow, but as much as I love making big fine art pieces to put on the walls, to decorate houses, what really drives my photography is using it for outreach and education and conservation. And generally speaking, I don't feel like it's done enough in the world of nature photography. Some folks are very proactive in that realm, but overall, I think that photography it's such a powerful tool to use in these. That's really what drives me and approach to photography. I live in Groveland, so we're not too far away. We've been there for 25 years. My wife's family's been there since the 1870s. So it's a really cool history in the area. I can talk a little more about that down the road. So, generally when people think of Yosemite, right, the first thing that comes to their mind are the big, iconic, grand landscapes that are stunning, right? Yosemite Falls, Upper and Lower Yosemite Falls here. El Capitan, obviously. And the amazing phenomena that's Horsetail Fall, right? People come from all over the world, thousands of people to come see it. And for good reason, because these icons in Yosemite are as beautiful as any places in the world, without a doubt. But as a result, because so much attention is focused on the landscapes, the wildlife oftentimes gets overlooked. And that's really unfortunate because there's both incredible diversity of wildlife and just incredible wildlife in Yosemite. And that's one of the reasons for the book, because there hadn't been another wildlife book on Yosemite in 100 years. So one was obviously well needed. And wildlife, like I mentioned, is just often overlooked. And it's really interesting because you think about parks that are considered the wildlife parks, right? Like Yellowstone, for instance. There's a really good comparison here because Yellowstone is about 3 times the size of Yosemite. In Yellowstone, there's about 67 species of mammals. Yosemite has 90. In almost a third the size of the space. Spectacular. It's a really amazing diversity of wildlife, but not seen that much. And one of the reasons is the big megafauna, right, in these parks. The elk and the deer and the grizzlies and the moose that everybody sees. And it's a smaller, more shy, elusive animals that make the wildlife in Yosemite a lot harder to see, as mentioned earlier, and to observe. And so that was the big part of this project, was to find these animals, photograph them through a variety of techniques. So I'll go over a little bit through the slideshow. And so in this, I'm going to talk a little bit, the goal is to talk a little bit about the different species in the park, some about their natural history, the cool aspects of their lives, and also talk a little bit about how I use photography, wildlife photography, to tell stories. So instead of just a portrait of an animal, I really try to capture images that tell the story of those animals in the context of where they're living, what they're doing. And I'll talk about aspects of that as I go on. Yes.
Maybe just talk from there, we can see you better.
Is that better? Sure. Sure, you bet. Yeah.
We're seeing you in profile.
Oh, got it. Yeah, the shadow. I probably look better on that side though. Dark. All right. All right. Fine. Talking about storytelling with wildlife images, and I do have a pointer, and as you can see, it works really good on the wall. It works terrible on the screen. Okay, and that's just the way these pointers work. So I'm going to try to use this some of the time. You're going to have to be really like tuned in and where I'm going to be pointing and things on the, or maybe I'll just point it out in other ways. So typically, nature photographers, when they try to photograph animals, they try to get as close to the animal as possible or use a long telephoto lens to fill the frame with the animal. And that can be good at times. But I find when putting the animal really small in the frame, in the context of the environment they're living in, their habitat, really tells a story of what they're doing. And so here's just a nice black bear cruising across a log in Yosemite Valley with some beautiful willows in the background and a big leaf maple that's in fall color, showing what the bear does out there living in the valley. Bald eagles are a lot of times I read about, they're considered pretty rare in Yosemite. That's not exactly my experience. I find sometimes in some areas they're quite common, especially in the fall, in the high country Tuolumne Meadows, especially the juveniles are up there a lot, learning how to hunt, and make a living out of it. One of the things that really helps to make the images where the animal's small in the frame, I call those environmental portraits, right? It's supposed to be like a close-up portrait. And some of the ways that those really work is when the backdrop is interesting, not just the animal, but where it is. And so here, this bald eagle on a big, beautiful live oak in the Merced River Canyon, and the tree trunks really help to fill the frame. It's interesting to look at, in addition to the bald eagle with a huge trout in its talons. Spend maybe 30, 40 minutes watching it just devour that fish. Environmental portraits can also lend a really good sense of scale to images, right? So if we're looking here at a golden eagle, right, with a 6 to 7 foot wingspan, their nests, this nest from top to bottom is probably 10 to 12 feet. They're huge. It's been used, I know for a fact, folks have been monitoring this nest in Yosemite. It's been in use for over 35 years. They use it over and over again. They build it up, and they're massive. And then it's actually fresh because when they're using them, they put some fresh cedar boughs on them oftentimes. Thought is that it probably helps to keep some insects out, that kind of thing. But again, the scale is amazing because we've got this huge bird with this tiny chick on a big nest. And this is all 1,500 feet off the deck of Yosemite Valley on a sheer vertical granite cliff face. It's amazing with the cool lichens in the backdrop. But I love this at the scale this shows.
How did you take that picture?
Yeah. So this is a really unique situation where it was in an alcove kind of where I could be on the nearby ridge looking across. I'm a long way away from it. Super long telephoto lens, also really cropped in. But I was able to not be like rappelling off of something or hanging out. I'll do that sometimes, but this one actually was a place that you can observe it from quite a ways away from the neighboring ridge. Yeah. Just like landscape photography, where interesting conditions or weather patterns, things that really make for more compelling images. Same thing's true with wildlife photography. So here's a red-shouldered hawk hunting right in the middle of a heavy snowstorm in Yosemite Valley. And this beautiful, cool, very, to me, like very Japanese like looking branches, give it a cool feel to it. Yeah. I could do a whole slideshow on Great Bear Owls. There's so much interesting natural history, information about them. They live spectacular lives. I'll suffice to have a couple cool, natural history tidbits of them. If you might know this already, but right, it's isolated, disjunct population that's set around Yosemite and the surrounding foothills that has been isolated for so long it's its own species now. They've found that out through genetic testing. So it's just not a lot of them. they're huge birds, biggest owl in North America, 5.5-foot wingspan. They've got this amazing facial disc, right? They hunt primarily by sound. Facial disc helps to funnel sound to their ears. One of the most amazing aspects of them, in that even such a huge, big body bird with a massive wingspan, they could fly right next to you within a few feet and you would never hear sound. Yeah. Had it happen. It's almost spooky. You hear a hummingbird flying, you hear a mosquito flying, right? And you hear everything else is flying, but not this massive bird. Really cool little ruffles in their feathers, their primary wing feathers, that allow them to change the physics of the air so that no wind, no air, no noise is produced when they're moving through. Yeah.
So this is a great gray owl,
Great gray owl. Yep.
and he's different from the ones with the little ears that come out
The great horned owl.
Yeah, great
Yep.
one. He's different.
Way different. Great horned owl are way more common. Similar size, they're both really big bodied owls. And not taking anything away from great horned owls because they're spectacular. Great grays have so much, because they're so rare and so rarely seen or even heard. There's just so much folklore around them, and a lot of birders are on the hunt trying to find great gray owls. It's a really highly sought after species. Yeah.
Are you willing to divulge where in Yosemite that shot was taken?
No, I can't. For a couple of reasons. I mean, it's not that I try to keep things secret, but I work a lot with the Park Service, and not even this particular image, but the relationship with them. It is such sensitive information that I would just, I have to keep. I have to keep those relationships really strong.
Sure.
Yeah.
How many people here have ever seen a great gray owl? I have one. Oh, well, 2, 3. Oh my God, great. Oh, it's not so bad.
How many great gray owls have seen you guys?
All of us.
Oh, they don't tell you to say it is like
Right.
this, right?
I mean, no doubt. I've had plenty of times that you'll walk right by and they're camouflaged. You don't see them. They want you to know to be seen. For the most part. What I like about this image more than anything else is, like, because I'm down in the grass and it's got all this blur, I feel like I'm a rodent. Like hiding out and down. Things don't see me, you know, come and see me, right? It's actually one of my favorite images. It's just a little brown creeper, but it's showing where a brown creeper lives and what it does, right? They spend a lot of time back in cracks and crevices behind bark of trees, looking for insects. It's also where they nest. And so him poking it, or she, I'm not sure if male and females look exactly like, just poking its head out of that little crack is just what they do. It's how they live. And just the aspect of it ends up being one of my favorite wildlife images for something so simple. There's another interpretation of brown creeper. This is not just a very mediocre image of bark. There's a bird in there. Anyone see the bird? I get accused of pointing it out too quickly. I was like, wait. Y'all having that chance to kind of see where the bird is? Yeah, right there. Head, tail, body, well camouflaged. Sticking on the camouflage idea. Here's a tree frog. See a tree frog on some cool granite with lichens. You know, simple, but lichens are beautiful. Tree frogs are cool. So, golden mantled, don't call me a chipmunk ground squirrel. And I say that because they're oftentimes confused with chipmunks. And I'll show you the difference here in a second. But here's a ground squirrel doing what it does oftentimes. Standing sentinel, looking for any predators, going to warn anybody if he sees anything happening, looking over his territory. This simple image of a golden mantled ground squirrel just eating some grass. Simple, but cute. And again, from a photography perspective, like a lot of folks, the impetus would be just to zero in right on the animal. But I look at photography more as a bigger landscape. And so just including all the other grasses in the frame really helped to make it more of an interesting overall image. Here's a chipmunk for contrast, right? You can see the stripes across the face. Easiest way to distinguish them. I particularly like this image because that's weird. Did that come on my computer? It didn't show up on the screen. That was weird. I like the tones, the overlapping tones on the chipmunk and the lichens on the granite, right?
It shows.
Yeah, exactly. Pygmy owl poking his head out of a cavity. I have another image of a pygmy owl a little bit later. I'm going to talk a little more about their biology, which is spectacular, really, really cool. And sometimes photographing wildlife, a really unique opportunity presents itself. So in this particular situation, the great blue heron was so still and stationary that I was able to use a really long shutter speed of a couple of seconds. So the water in the backdrop has really got this flowy, ethereal look to it. It's way more pleasing than just a fast shutter speed. And so only because the bird was so still for that period of time did it work. I've tried this other situations. Rarely does it all manifest, but it's great. He's all fluffed out, trying to keep warm, just on one leg, resting, snoozing, waking up. This is on the Merced River in Yosemite Valley.
Oh,
Sometimes little things are just to me like little works of art, right? It's just a little lupin, flowers of a lupin, with a dragonfly, a 4-spotted dragonfly, I believe, on the end of it, but it just has this very artistic like look to me backlit. So all those other environmental portraits I've been showing where the animal's small in the frame are taken with a long telephoto lens, maybe, and I'm really far from the animals, right? Another way to photograph an environmental portrait is to get really, really close to the animal and use a wide angle lens, which I did here. And so my past background was working as a herpetologist for USGS. So I'm very comfortable with snakes and rattlesnakes. This one was so cool, calm, chill, wasn't flicking its tongue out, wasn't rattling, wasn't doing anything. So I saw it in this situation. Again, another unique opportunity where I had my camera on a tripod and I would just slowly move it closer to the snake. I'm behind the camera and the tripod, totally safe. I wouldn't do anything that would like stupid person getting bit by a snake. Closer and closer till by the time I took that shot, the front of the lens was probably like 10 inches from the snake, really, really close. But again, like I'm behind the camera, there's no way it can strike me. I know it's not going to strike anyway because it's not detecting me. It's not like checking me out with its tongue. And so it was totally fine. But to me, it puts a great perspective of a snake eye view of where it lives underneath this manzanita forest. So some snake prey. How about that? We've got this is a big-eared wood rat. Wood rats live amazing lives, right? They build these huge homes, domiciles that end up being homes to a lot of other critters as well, sharing with other animals. They're also really, interestingly built in that there are oftentimes several false entrances. So there'll be like tunnels that go in and then dead end. So the predator would kind of go, oh, there's nothing in here, and like back out. And these guys know how they come in and out. This was taken with the camera trap. And I'm going to talk a little about that technology a little bit later. But I use a lot of the images in the book, the Yosemite Wildlife book, were taken remotely with a camera trap like this, where I can be present for more elusive, shy animals, nocturnal animals, things like that. And I'll talk about the technique of it in a little bit.
So this was at night when you took that shot?
This is at night. So these guys are almost exclusively nocturnal.
So do you have a big light that shined on there?
Yep. So flashes, a couple of different flashes are set up on this, and I'm gonna show a similar setup for another animal that's like this a little bit later. When I talk a little more about how I use camera traps. Yeah. This might be the smallest, the chance where my environmental portrait, the animal is the smallest it's ever been in the frame. And this is actually on our property in Groveland. And this is really one of these other bizarre, unique situations. We had a big snowstorm. This massive part of the tree fell over into this tripod form, standing up. And walking up one day, I saw a sign. I saw scat. It was obviously an owl, a pellet below. So I knew someone was using the perch. And so I set up a camera trap, some different types of technology, and a remote trigger. if something were to land on there, to capture it. And we have some barn owls that nest in our meadow. It's kind of a ghost of the forest. And the crazy thing is, within 2 to 3 weeks after it's taken, I'm like, oh, I want to do this more, catch other animals on there. The whole thing fell over. And one of the things I've learned this whole thing is like, oh, sometimes I used to say, oh, I'll do that next week. Oh, I'll do that, when I have time in the future. I've learned now, and I don't always do what I say, but to jump on an opportunity when they present themselves, because oftentimes it won't be there in the future. You'll miss a lot of opportunities, so don't get me wrong.
Is that
Yeah.
now?
I'm sorry, there's a barn owl. Yes, there's a barn owl, yeah. Really small in the frame. I'm photographing wildlife, multiple animals in the frame. I'm more interesting than just one animal, obviously. Here's some pond turtles. And I hate to anthropomorphize too much, but whenever I see these guys basking in the sun, and looks like they're smiling. They got these upturned little mouths. Look like they're happy. They're just out there basking, smiling, all yeah.
How big are they?
Not very big. So the shell is maybe about that big.
Oh.
Yeah.
And that's our only native.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And the actually crazy thing is, on a side note, we're going to publishing within a couple of days of the wildlife book, and I had sourced. There's like 20 images in the book that aren't mine that I'd sourced from the places I couldn't get, and we'd had one of pond turtles from somebody else, and I just wasn't happy with it. I really just wasn't as good as a lot of the other images in the book. We wanted to keep that bar really high, and I had just heard a tip about where to find some pond turtles. Drove out there literally 2 days before we sent everything off to publication, and hung out and caught that image. Like, cool. It's really a neat one with the reflection.
Oh.
And when photographing multiple animals, it's always more interesting when they're engaging in behavior as well, right? And for those of you thinking these are two toads getting a little frisky, you'd be wrong and a bit naughty. These are two male toads wrestling.
Oh.
So Yosemite toads are a threatened species, live at high elevations in Yosemite. They have a really amazing reproductive strategy. They nest in very shallow pools, only a couple of inches deep, that are fed by snowmelt. And so they're only there for very short periods of time, that amount of water. And so they have their reproductive strategies. These males, when the pools are at the right time, the males will come out, they wrestle with each other, they jump on each other's back, they try to shove the other one's head under the water, and they're battling with each other. Once they kind of claim their little space, their territory, the females come out, lay eggs, they're fertilized by the male toads, and those eggs hatch in 12 to 14 days in the tadpoles. And those tadpoles metamorphose into young toads in 2 months, which is an incredibly fast reproductive strategy. The way to deal with these ponds, these shallow pools of water that dry out fast as well. Another thing I like to mention about this image is, because it's actually one of my favorite wildlife images, is that people go all over the world, spend a lot of money to go photograph polar bears and grizzlies, and taking salmon out of rivers and the big megafauna and the Tetons and Yellowstone. For me, I had an epic encounter laying in the mud 20 feet from these toads, watching them battle and wrestle and fight than any of that big megafauna that's all over the place. So the point is that you can find these really cool encounters, even on smaller scales, if you're willing and look for them and don't need the ultra charismatic animals in your frame. And that was up at like 10,000 feet, those toads up above Tuolumne Meadows. Yellow-bellied marmots, some baby ones here. They're just cute and they're fun to look at. And they some of the most charismatic animals. They're just standing sentinel, overlooking their little territory. Here's two adults in their courtship behavior. Of all the animals in Yosemite, yellow-bellied marmots are not just some of the easier ones to see, because they tend to be out during the middle of the day, sunning on rocks and things like that. But they're also really charismatic, really fun to watch. They have these manners, they interact with each other, is super entertaining and fun. This is a couple of adults who are chasing each other around right before courting, and just watching them engage was great. Here's another great reproductive strategy. This is a killdeer. Okay, killdeer, really widespread birds. They nest everywhere from, I don't know the exact ranges, but I know that they nest on our property in Groveland at 3,000 feet, all the way up to here, 10,000 feet up in Tuolumne Meadows, and they're really widespread. They're ground nesting birds, okay? And they have a really long incubation period. So the eggs are incubated for something like 28 to 30 days, whereas most birds that size are more like 2 weeks or so. And the reason for that is when they hatch, the young are on their own. They don't depend upon their parents to feed them at all. So here we have a chick that is literally a couple hours old, few hours old, now already running around trying to feed itself. This chick was just born within, 20, 30 minutes maybe. It's still like drying up, getting out of its egg and everything. But even at that point, the adults don't do anything for them. These guys are running around trying to learn how to feed themselves. And by the end of the day, I think I brought one more here. Yeah. So by the end of the afternoon, this is like a fully mature chick late that afternoon. And at the end of the day, they dispersed with the adults and never saw them again. Yeah. Precocial is the terminology for birds that are entirely on their own when they hatch.
Such a cute picture.
How many other species are like that?
Precocial?
Yeah.
I don't know. Not a lot. Not a lot. It's a really relatively rare strategy.
You wonder how they can survive, because where I've seen on this is little pebbles on the ground.
Yeah.
It's so easy to step on.
Yeah.
You probably saw them doing their distraction behavior, broken wing and everything. Yeah, exactly.
Their parents.
Yep. No, they're incredibly camouflaged. The nests on the ground, the eggs are unbelievably well camouflaged. Yeah. Threes are great too. They're better than twos. Acorn woodpeckers,
Nice picture. Wow.
very gregarious, loud, fun birds. They live in these extended family groups where the young from previous years help the new young of the current year. Have these amazing granaries where they store acorns for the off season. So this is that family barn owl. It's like that one I showed you that was on that little tripod branch that live in our meadow. And as part of the wildlife book, in order to capture some of the more sensitive and nocturnal species, especially at nests, I had a camera converted to infrared. And then by using infrared filters on flashes, that when the flash goes off, it just shows like a dull red. It doesn't disturb animals at night, even nocturnal animals and sensitive animals. And so I had this set up to be able to photograph these owls and some other images I'll show you in a little bit for the sensitive guys. And there are 3 juvenile barn owls. Excuse me. They've already left the nest, but they keep coming back into it during the day, hanging out there. When the sun goes down, it was pitch black. They would come out and start getting all active and come out and start learning how to hunt. And so with infrared, they're always black and white. The image on the computer from the digital file renders it a reddish tone, sort of weird. So you have to convert to black and white just to make it a reasonable image to look at. River otters are pretty rare in Yosemite and rarely seen. That being said, there's a handful of spots where they have taken up residence and are there quite a bit of time in Yosemite Valley as well. This is in Yosemite Valley. And also, like yellowback marmots, they're some of the most fun animals to watch. They're just so gregarious and then playing and engaging with each other. And I had a really amazing encounter with river otters. So I was photographing landscapes on the Merced River one day in the valley, and I heard a big splash, and the wake started coming my way, the river around a bend. And my first instinct was to hide behind a tree, right, to make sure I was going to be hidden in case something came by. Oops, I didn't mean to hit that button. And then, shortly thereafter, I see this otter swimming up towards me with a huge fish, right? And I'm still behind the tree, so it doesn't see me, and then it hauls out on a log right away from me. And it's like sneak out behind the tree, and I'm checking it out, photographing it. And then it flipped the fish around and started chomping on its tail. What's he doing that for? I'm like, that's the least nutritious part of fish. Here, it's the skin off, right? What's going on? Until the fish gave one massive lurch, got out of the paws of the otter, and then tried to swim away. But it had no tail. It had no propulsion. the river otter just casually reached down, grabbed it, looked at the fish like, what are you doing, you little fishy? And proceeded to munch on it and eat the rest of it. Really cool behavior. I'd read about that kind of thing. I'd never seen it, but to be able to witness it, photograph it. So here you can see it actually eating the tail first. The head is down below. That's just destroying its tail. And then flipped it around and ate the rest of it. Family groups are always great. There's the green teal in Yosemite Valley on the Merced River, the beautiful reflection. Black-headed grosbeak. I use a lot of blinds, and I'll talk a little bit about my general ethics in wildlife photography in a little bit. But for this kind of image, for anything that nests, I'm in a full camouflage blind. They don't know I'm present. Just coming in, going in and out, doing their own business. Canyon wren, right? Probably some beautiful songs of any birds out there. If you're familiar with the canyon wren, it's just absolute beautiful vocalization. They nest up in really high, like rocky. God, I keep hitting the wrong button.
What's he got in his mouth?
Yeah, right. I'm not sure. I need an entomologist. It's some kind of funky insect. I don't know. Yeah, I haven't really spent enough time trying to figure it out. It wasn't really obvious to me. People I showed it to.
So there's the baby.
Yeah,
back
there's a
there?
chick. Yep, the chicks are back in this little rock crevice.
He's kind of,
This is also one of my favorite images and kind of fun story behind it. So one of the big goals for the wildlife books, I really wanted to photograph a bat in flight, which, as you can imagine, would be really hard, right? It's dark, it's night, catching it in flight would be really challenging. But I got a tip from some Park Service biologist friends that there was a roost underneath the Bryceburg Bridge outside of Yosemite. So I drove down with all my gear and I checked it out, and it has some really good potential because all the bats would have to fly out of a relatively small corridor coming in and out of their roost. And so it narrowed that field of vision for me to set up some gear. And so I have a really high speed trigger, LiDAR trigger that can focus, it can fire the frame so fast to capture things in flight, insects, as well as birds and bats. And I set up some strobes, some flashes nearby. It's known that for bats in this situation, flashes really don't bother them because they're echolocating all the time, so flashes really don't bother them. And so I set this stuff up and I had a lounge chair a little ways away underneath the bridge. So I would, like, after getting set up, I'd go there, sleep for a little bit, wake up, do some settings on the camera. Cars are roaring by over the bridge, and I'm hoping a cop doesn't come and wonder what this weirdo hobo is doing under the bridge with all this electronic gear, right? Morning comes around, go to my camera, look at all the images, nothing useful, all just out of focus, no bats, just, lots of frames, but nothing any good. And I was so frustrated, I was pretty pissed off. I wanted to see what these little buggers looked like. So I crawled up onto the piling of the bridge, had to weasel my way through some bat guano to get underneath it. And I'm looking straight up into this roost of Mexican free-tailed bats. And so if you look carefully, it's concrete. It's not a natural rock. It's just concrete. But they're just stacked in there, right? Just stacked. It's one little dude with his eye open. It's just is a really just speaks to me. I absolutely love that image. And I also like to tell the story because a lot of people think my job as a wild or nature photographer is all romantic. I just go, oh, there's a nice animal. Oh, there's a cool one. So crawling through bat guano and spending the night as a hobo under a bridge. It's a little bit more into perspective, but a lot of the real life is like. I did go back a few weeks later and captured a bat in flight. Same setup, just changed a few things. And kind of interesting because this is actually a canyon myotis bat sharing the roost with the Mexican free-tailed bats, which the biologist didn't know was going on, but pointed out. This is Western Mastiff bats, biggest bat in North America. 3-foot wingspan. Huge bats.
And they're in Yosemite?
They're in Yosemite. Not many of them, very little to know about their ecology, their distribution, even how, their just general natural history. Very little is known about them. A couple of roosts they do know about in the park, they told me about.
Do you know that what's her name? The lady who came, what was it?
Gracie.
Jay.
Oh, Jocelyn. Oh, Jen Jocelyn. Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah, I know well.
She came.
She's great.
She came.
I did see that one. She's
Yeah, yeah.
awesome. I mean, all the biologists in the park, I love. They're good friends of mine. She's great. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Animals doing things is great. Here's a pika. It also helps when they're really, really cute. They can't, it's arguably the cutest animal in Yosemite. It's up for debate. I don't know, but here it's bringing back some love. They make hay piles. They have the high elevations in Yosemite from these little, they're actually more closely related to rabbits than rodents. And so, but they live for these little relatively, they don't look like they're very durable animals. They live at high elevations underneath tons of snow in the winter, and they make these hay piles that they feed on throughout the winter. And even within their hay piles, they're so strategic, right? Oftentimes they layer it, and so the stuff at the bottom of the hay pile is stuff that can resist the insects and rot more so than the stuff on the top of the hay pile they're going to eat sooner. I mean, all these little intricacies of their behavior that make them successful. Pika, American pika, yeah. And they're about this big. They're little fuzzy little dudes. They're really not very big. Here's a pygmy owl again. Pygmy owls are amazing, right? They're tiny. They're like, maybe this big, but they are some of the fiercest predators out there. Ounce for ounce, maybe the baddest ass predator. They'll take prey 3 to 4 times their size. Super ferocious when it comes to anything within their range. You could just ask this little fence lizard who got destroyed. This particular nest, I think oftentimes individual animals in territories focus on certain things, whatever they have around them. So pygmy owls take a lot of prey, birds, a lot of other animals. This particular pair took a ton of lizards. I watched them bringing lizards back to this nest over and over again in Yosemite Valley. Easy pickings for them there, and this is what they've keyed into because it was super available prey. This is one of the most remarkable encounters I've had as well. I was in Yosemite Valley, wandering around just looking for things to check out, photograph, or watch. And then through a bunch of vegetation, really obscured, I could see a bobcat that was hunting. It was in stalk mode. It was checking something out. And I could see some other vegetation, what it was going for, and it was some gray squirrel that was taking a dust bath. And the first inclination or instinct for a lot of photographers, even me at the time, was like, oh, if I move my position, I'm going to get a clear line of sight into what's about to transpire. But I knew if I did that, if I moved, I might screw the hunt up, either scare the squirrel away or the bobcat. And so I just held my position and I waited. Maybe a minute later, dust flies up and I hear this blood curdling squeal of a rodent losing its life. And even that moment, I'm like, oh, I really want to see this. If I just move over a little bit, I'm going to get a clear shot. But I didn't want to disturb anything. And so I just held my space. I think, I kind of lost the opportunity, but whatever, that's cool. As the bobcat was walking away, came around a tree and glanced at me and looked at me. Fired a couple of frames. And again, the anthropomorphizing side of me is saying, oh, he's thanking me for not screwing up his hunt, right? Or he's just saying, hey, look what I caught. But it's pretty remarkable. And that kind of dovetailed what I talked about earlier about my approach with ethics when it comes to wildlife photography. There's a lot of unethical wildlife photographers out there, photographers in general, especially wildlife photography. There's either baiting animals or chasing owls or following things and really impacting their behavior. My goal with any wildlife photography possible is that the animal doesn't know my presence. So either or if it knows my presence, it's not affected by my presence with behavior. And so either I'm using camouflage blinds to hide in, or I'm using trees, vegetation to obscure my presence, really reading their behavior to see how it's affecting them. But it's paramount importance to me to let the animals go about their natural behavior and not impact it. I can't say that it doesn't always happen. I mean, sometimes you just can't avoid something, but it's really a primary goal with how I approach it. Sometimes you can get really cool whole stories within one little image. So here we've got a Sierra blue butterfly on a shooting star. And not just as a cool looking butterfly on a cool looking flower, but it's actually the host plant for that butterfly. So that butterfly finds a shooting star, lays its eggs on it. Those eggs hatch into larvae. The larvae feed on the shooting star, then metamorphose into butterflies. Butterflies do their thing, mate, find another shooting star. It's like the whole ecological circle, all within one kind of cool, pretty image. Not a lot of Canada geese in Yosemite, except for a couple of the mid-elevation lakes. Where they spent some time, and I was out there for 4 or 5 days last year, a few years ago, I should say, just looking for things to photograph, wildlife and such. And I was paddling by a small island, and this goose was nesting right on the edge of the island. Like I paddled by and didn't mind my presence or in a boat, right, as I was cruising next to it. And it gave me an idea. And so I put my camera on a tripod, got all the settings, everything dialed in, and I circled back around the island. And as I went by a exposed rock off of the island, I set my camera on that rock, pointed at the nest and the bird, and I paddled around the other side of the island, and I hid out because the camera was going to be too close, so I could watch what was going on. And so whenever something interesting would happen, like the goose would get up and move around, I'd photograph some frames. Like right at the very end of the day, this beautiful light came in. And I fired some frames, and then after that, the coolest thing happened. So the very last bit of light, the goose reached down with its huge neck and rotated all of the eggs in the nest so they get evenly incubated. So they'll hatch this similar to it. Again, as a biologist in my days, I read about things like this, but to see it, be able to photograph it is really, really cool. Sometimes there's whole like mutual of Omaha wild kingdom moments on a micro scale. So I was walking this Crane Flat area of Yosemite. I was just out there photographing flowers and butterflies and interesting things. And I saw this one butterfly that was hanging off a flower in a really weird position. Yeah. Upon closer inspection, you can see it's in the grasp of a crab spider. Yeah. So we've got a crab spider here holding on to this fritillary butterfly. And I'm like, wow, this is great. Got my camera on the tripod, I'm photographing it, checking it out, and then all of a sudden a skipper lands on the flower. I literally busted out laughing behind my camera, like, what's going on? Does even know what's happening here? Fired a bunch of frames, and then the skipper moved on. And sometimes you don't even know what's going on or why. So this is we were paddling around one of the other lakes in Yosemite, and actually my son is in the back right there. So I see a snake, and there was a snake that was this garter snake that was off on a rock on the edge of the lake. So we paddled around to get a look at it, and we were sitting up above it, maybe 10 feet, and it would warm up in the sun on a rock, and then it would take forays out into the water, swimming around looking for fish or other animals to eat, right? And it would come back to that same perch or spot, warm up for a while, and then take another lap. And we watched it take a bunch of laps, thinking one of these times it's going to come home with a fish or something cool to check out and photograph. It never did. But at the tail end, this dragonfly landed on the snake's head while it was there basking. No idea why. It stayed there for a while. So I got my camera, got in a lower elevation to get a straight line look across it, photographed it for a while, stayed for a little bit, and then it moved on. And again, I don't know why. I think it was just happenstance. I think that the dragonfly found a place to land, had no idea it was a snake's head. Snake probably had no idea the dragonfly on his head, but pretty cool encounter.
You know which goddess name it is?
This is a
Aquatic goddess?
no, it's
Does it have a yellow?
yeah, it doesn't have it red though. It doesn't have it red. I'm gonna give me a second. I get all these names in my head. I'll come back to it.
That's great.
So talking about camera trap gear.
Yeah.
So camera traps are ways to photograph shy, elusive, nocturnal animals that you are not going to be able to be in their presence to photograph or to be able to see them. And so this is kind of my standard setup I take in the field, where I've got a waterproof Pelican box with a port that lens sticks out of inside that box, a really nice camera, like not just your point and shoot cameras, but a nice high-end digital SLR. The little stand that I put the camera on. And inside the backpack are flashes, a lot of electronic equipment for things to talk to each other. And then also a passive infrared trigger. So these actually detect heat, is the way most of these remote triggers work. When the heat detection changes is when the camera would fire, and if it's nighttime, I'd have flashes and stuff set up. And so this would be a typical setup for me, where this is a game trail, well used by mountain lions. That was why we set it up here. Cameras underneath this camouflage covering, little PIR sensor, flash up here, another flash over here in case it's at night. And you see all these amazing images of camera trap photography, right? And I'm going to show you some that are pretty cool. But the reality is, this is usually what you get. The butt of a mountain lion cruising on our property in Groveland. Out of focus bear head is about to shoot on my camera trap, which happens very regularly. They're notorious for like being inquisitive and checking the smell of the camera trap and chewing on me. All the camera trappers I know have all bear marks on their camera traps. Part of the deal.
Do you keep handprints and stuff off your camera?
So for a while I did. And when we're doing stuff with, say, like fishers or really threatened endangered animals, we still do that. I don't know if it makes a difference or not. Bears are such good senses. I'm not sure, but I have done that. I haven't noticed much for bear changing their behavior, but when things are sensitive, yes, we do that. Yeah. So that being said, you do occasionally come up lucky. And this is that exact camera trap setup right here. So low elevation, this is that branch in the backdrop, this is that tree. It's obviously under nicer light when the lion came through, but that's what I got out of it. This is on a property down by Mariposa. There's another cool camera trap image of a good looking black bear on our property in Groveland. Oh, this one too, because you can see all the burrs. All those stickers that we all know, the pain in the butt those little stickers can be. This is one of my more challenging, animals I'm probably most proud of to capture for the wildlife book. Ringtail, really elusive. People only see them running across the road oftentimes, but rarely seen. For full disclosure on this one, I got clued into by one of the Park Service biologist friends of mine that he thought he found a latrine of a ringtail. So ringtail, like a few other animals, go to the bathroom in the same spot. They've got their own bathroom that over and over again go to the bathroom there. It's a latrine. And so it's actually communication. It's how a lot of these animals will communicate with each other. They come in the smell, they know a lot about what's going on. And once he's found this latrine, I'm like, oh, we know the animal's coming in and out of it some regularly. So I set up a camera trap nearby. And so the latrine is way back in here. And so this is how I see was either coming in or out of it, doing its thing. Really cool animals.
So the ringtail is of the fox family or the
Raccoon, closest to raccoon.
family?
Yep. Prey on a generalist, lot of insects, a lot of small mammals, even fruits they're known to eat. But they eat a lot. They're kind of a general badass little predator. And of all the images, this might have been the most challenging to get and most rewarding. So this is a fisher, an endangered species. There's only 150 to maybe 300 individuals, they think, kind of mostly south of Yosemite or sorry, the Merced River drainage to the south. This is also taken with a camera trap and the infrared I was talking about. So really, this is near one of their dens. This was working with the Park Service biologists. It's not something that, not just be able to find a fisher, you can't just put a camera trap out anywhere. So with their help and support and doing things the most ethical way possible, capturing fishers are amazing for a lot of different reasons, right? They're the big member of the weasel family. One of the most remarkable adaptations is they're able to rotate their back paws 180 degrees. So it can either be facing up or down, which enables them to descend a tree head first, right? So most animals you see have to back down, they can descend head first, and that enables them to hunt from above. And in some areas, they're actually known to be porcupine specialists because they figured out a way to attack a porcupine's head from above and not get, destroyed. I mean, obviously they must get some quills, but they're well known to be porcupine predators, as well as hunting other animals from above.
Right.
Really, really cool.
How big is that animal?
So, like that one is probably like that. And again, the tail is
Quite big.
again, yeah, that's a big member of the weasel family. Wolverines are bigger and probably the only one that's bigger, I would think, than a fisher. Yeah. And very, like, this is an adult, and a mid-sized adult. I mean, the bigger adults are actually considerably larger than this. Anything else I was going to say about them? Just they were endangered. And so in the camera trapping, ideally, when possible, I'm not just capturing an image of an animal, but again, I want an interesting backdrop, an interesting like where they're living and what they're doing. And so this is an example of that. This is actually on our property. This is one of the first camera trap opportunities I worked on. And this is a game trail here. But what struck me, why I like this spot, is these big, beautiful oak trees in the backdrop. So that's why I set a camera in the vegetation here. This is the trigger and some flashes up here to capture this bobcat that was moving through. And again, it's really the rest of the scene that to me makes it really extra interesting, the oak trees. And on that same general setup, capture this gray fox. And again, like for full disclosure, I obviously had the composition set up and what I was trying to capture, but the fresh rain and the moon popping up through the mist was not my doing, right? That was just pure fortuitous luck and not AI or digital manipulation.
Okay.
Sometimes get accused of, but I don't do any of that. Here's another camera trap setup. So logs crossing streams, anywhere where there's a bottleneck, where animals are all going to come narrow, so they're where they're moving is to me like, oh, that's a great spot for a camera trap. And so we found this log that was crossing a creek. So I've got a camera on a tripod here, flash, somewhere in here, there's a trigger. And the idea actually initially was to capture ringtail in this zone because we'd seen some sign. No ringtail, but got this bobcat crossing the middle.
Wow.
So I've been talking a lot about these environmental portraits by putting the animal small in the frame, or behavioral moments when animals are actually doing something. All that being said, sometimes just a portrait of an animal is great too, especially when it's as stunning as the sooty grouse or the blue grouse. Their plumage is some of the most beautiful and intricate around in the bird world. And it's especially easy when they're this cute. So this is a baby spotted owl. And spotted owls, or owls in general, oftentimes leave the nest far earlier than you think they would. Like oftentimes birds don't leave their nest till there's someone mobile, they can fly and they can do things, right? Oftentimes I found that owls leave the nest early. And it's not always known why. I'm talking to some biologist friends of mine, but one of the thoughts is that it can get pretty nasty in an owl cavity. With the prey and things coming in, maybe it just gets taken over by infestation of bugs or something like that drive the young out early. Because when he's out at this stage, he's so vulnerable. I saw him sitting on a rock and literally like, anybody's just gonna swoop and grab him. He really has no defense, has no like camouflage ability or want to hide. Like they're just hanging out there until they grow a little older and have the ability to move around and get their wings and start flying. So I think that's all of the wildlife images. This last slideshow I'd done maybe a month ago, and it was not that long after that crazy late winter storm that we had in Yosemite. And so I had a few bonus landscape images that I was going to show to them, and because it's already in there, I just threw them in for you guys. So this is in Yosemite Valley, just that crazy, really heavy snowstorm we had.
Yeah.
The last one wasn't that long ago. It was late. It was really bizarre. When they closed Yosemite, I fortunately got closed on the inside of Yosemite. It's a good place to be closed. El Capitan. This is really cool because there was so much snow loading and so much tree failure during this event And I had photographed the same group of trees the day before. And I went back to it because I thought, well, these conditions were even better than the day before. Heavy, heavy snow. So I went back to photograph it. And as I got closer to it, I'm like, oh my God, one of the branches broke, screwed up my whole composition. What am I going to do? As I looked at it more carefully, I'm like, it's better this way.
Yeah.
It's telling the story of like that just broke, this huge scar from the heavy snow loading, a little bit of color in an otherwise white and black scene. And to me, this just speaks to like what was going on at that moment. And the funny thing is, like, I was so disappointed at first, right? And then like reality hit me. It's a beautiful light on the Merced River. I mean, Yosemite's epic anytime, but under fresh snow, it is arguably the most magical place anywhere in the world. It's unbelievable. And I'll leave you with this one, which is a really bizarre abstract. I have a lot of friends think I drew that. And there's nowhere I'm anywhere near talented enough to draw. These are just grasses or sedges sticking up out of the snow, and then for some reason, enough snow bent them over all in a similar kind of pattern. That's all that's going on in there. All right, and that is the slideshow. And I'm really happy to answer questions. I love chatting, questions, or any ideas, thoughts. Yeah.
So when you're talking about your epic, how do you feel about either bait or lure?
Negative. I would never do that. I don't. I highly advocate against it. I'm not talking about bird feeders and things like that, but baiting animals and luring animals.
Baiting, yeah.
So I mean, it's common practice in some places for photographers to hot dogs to bring bobcats in and things like that. I heard that early on in my earliest photography days when I was like in my early 20s, just getting into nature photography and natural history, and it appalled me. I couldn't do it. And it's just so bad for the animals. It really negatively affects they can't digest the food that people are giving them, changes their behavior, changes their young. So no, I highly advocate against any luring of wildlife. I mean, and well, I might go on the tangent of the bears in Yellowstone that have people chasing them all the time, that I think is also not good for their well-being.
Any truth to Wolverines being over there?
And say it again?
Is there any truth to a Wolverine?
Oh, yeah.
Being over there?
Oh yeah, for sure. No, camera traps have caught a wolverine. I mean, you probably know more than me about this, but they I mean, kind of a bizarre one. A camera, some folks at Mammoth Mountain last year, some people that were working there got an image of a wolverine cruising right through, and then a couple other camera traps. I can't remember exactly where, when, but maybe you know more specific info. But
in Sierra National Forest, they also have.
yeah, so they have been moving through, not a lot, but they are making their way into the Sierra. Yeah, that would be top of my list to try to photograph. That would be
I think there's only a single solitary one that was all of those sightings.
Oh,
And it supposedly came from Idaho, Wyoming, or whatever. So there's no known presence at this time of a Sierra Nevada wolverine
got it.
based on genetics, but
Yeah.
there have been clear sightings of wolves.
Yeah. Hopefully they make their way back like wolves.
Yes. Well, thank you, Rob. That was excellent.
I'm gonna add one more thing real quick. So there's a talk next Tuesday. So here, Beth Pratt, who did the wildlife book, she did the writing wildlife book. In fact, the wildlife book was really her she did the genesis of it. She wanted to work on that book for a while. She asked me to do the photography, and then from that point on, we collaborated to make the book project. But the initial genesis of it was her idea. And so she's doing a talk for the Sierra Club here, a little bit on the wildlife book, and then a lot on her work with mountain lions and building crossings and things like that for connectivity of habitat. She's a conservation superstar. A lot of great work out there. So it's next Tuesday here. Yeah, I was going to do that with her, but then I was going to be gone, and then I was approached with this, which is perfect.
Just the reason that he's sharing that is the Sierra Club group, for a number of reasons, didn't get the publicity out that they intended through their newsletter and others as early as possible. There may be an article in the paper about it,
Hey, friends.
So you may.
7:30. And Rob's book is the.
Oh, I've got books in the back. Yeah, I'm a terrible salesperson. I really am. No, I'm good at selling other people's stuff, but not my own. But I do have two books. I published the first book, The Nature of Yosemite, is a coffee table photography book with essays from lots of good friends of mine. The head geologist so far wrote one on the geology. John Muir Laws wrote the foreword. Great ecology essays in the book about the park. And then I wrote snippets in there, and then the Yosemite Wildlife book, obviously the one just came out. If you're interested, happy to send one home with you.
Tuesday. And this is our last program.
No,
No,
I don't think so.
I thought you were coming up Tuesday.
I don't know anymore. And I can't look at my thing yet.
We do a door prize each time. And I'll have to figure out. On that. But I'll go back and look at those. Thank you. We have refreshments on the back provided by Patty Henderson. Thank you, Patty.
Great.